Hemshech Hayim Beis, Volume 1, up to chapter 166, page
168.
168, chapter 168, Kuf Samach, page 338, and the discourse 42, Dvarim Ayin Gimel. And we're in the midst of the elaborate discussion on Adam Kadmon as interface. So we've established so far, and the Rebbe Rashab works his way, I guess, down, because he first explained the role of the Hagvul as it manifests in the Kav and in Atzilus. The role of that interface was to create a relationship between the Gvul of existence and the Gvul of Nelikus. That even in Nelikus, there's also how God envisions the structure of existence, which is basically the Medida Atzmis, the core measurements in the Torah. The Torah's limitations, the Torah's finite structure is not due because it's limited, but because that's what God wanted. He wanted a shir to be, He wanted a world with measurements, and He wanted mitzvahs to fit those measurements. So everything is measured. So when you say, for example, God said to build a mishkan with these and these measurements, it's not because God is limited and therefore it has to be in limited measurements. It's because that's what He wants. He wants a world which is defined by measurements, and that's where He wants to manifest. He wants to manifest between the two, what we call Badei Ha'aron. Staves. The two rods that carry the Aron. But that's not because He's limited in that image. When we fit ourselves into something, so we confine ourselves because we're limited creatures, so we have to figure out how to maneuver in a limited, finite universe. For God, that's just another way of God's expression.
There's Gvul and Bli Gvul together,
No, the word means, it depends how you explain it. Yeah, but it's not Bli Gvul as in Bli Gvul, because we also have the divine revelation that's Bli Gvul. Mamish Bli Gvul. Just like he manifests in a confined place, He can also manifest in an expansive way. And for us to appreciate the divine, you want to have both. So there's also Ir HaBli Gvul.
Can you explain what it means? He manifests Himself between the two rods, between the two stairs, when He at the same time is in the rest of the world.
Well, that's the Medrash that talks about that we spoke about the mirrors.
He's still everywhere.
Well, let's put it this way. You could put it this way. You could say that for you to have a relationship with God, you have to be everywhere, because God is everywhere. Or even in your small space, you could have a relationship with God. That's what it means. Obviously, when He says that He manifests between the two rods, it's not that He's not anywhere else. It doesn't say that He's suddenly not anywhere else. The question is whether you could experience God in your small little world, in your life. That's the question. That's the whole issue. It's never about God. Not that God, whether God. That's the whole point. In other words, you could argue that you want to have a relationship with God, you have to do big things. If you don't do big things, you can't, because God is very big. You have to be Bli Gvul some way. That's the whole beauty of the interface, that even in our terms, that's when it comes down to it, it means simply as a human being like us, that eats and sleeps and is limited, and then in many ways we're mortals. How can we have a relationship with something that's God? That's why I said that there were philosophers, both L'mal Yusa and L'Griusa. Some, the ones that were like Kofrim, basically said, God, Azav Hashem, God is not, this world is not. And then there were those that said, Mitzad Gadlus Hashem, that God is so great, but He cares about our little, stupid little thing, petty stuff. That was like the ones that say that God can't care about those details. And the Chiddush of Yiddishkeit is really a Chassidus Chabad, is that no, in your little detail, don't limit God to your vision, that He can only God is great means He's only great beyond our detail. For Him, Bli Gvul and Gvul are equal. So the God that is Sheshmayim V'Sa'aretz Animali, and the God between Shnei Badei Ha'aron, which really means on our terms, is the same God. That's what it means. Havayu Elokim, really. So if you're right, if you would say that He's only been Shnei Badei Ha'aron and He's no longer outside of that's correct. Now, there's definitely some type of revelation that's in the Holy of Holies that's not existent on other places. That's why it's called Holy of Holies. But that's already a revelation thing. That's because the Eibishter wanted that in some places should be more of a gili, like a Sefer Torah is not a table. But that doesn't mean that God is split into two. That's another discussion, how that worked. What means something of Kedusha? And that's not what your question was. But that question is also a relevant question. And the truth is, the honest truth, that ultimately Mitzad Atzmus, a Sefer Torah and Chil should be equal. Except because he wanted Sefer Torah to be expression of himself, so Sefer Torah is definitely a more expression of the divine. But when I say expression, not necessarily that his presence is there more. In other words, the Eibishter chose and said that when you do something that is holy, you have to separate yourself. There are rules of what becomes a keli for Kedusha. So Sefer Torah, because it was written with Kedusha, that's why it became a keli. Because listen, at the end of the day, Sefer Torah, the Torah scroll was once a piece of parchment, which was once a piece of skin, which was once part of an animal that had no Kedusha in it more than anything else in this world. When you were Mekadosh it and you designated it for this, and then you wrote the letters the way it should be written, that God wanted gives it a status that is, let's put it this way, it becomes an agent of the divine. See, I think it's important to always think of things, are they expressing the divine or are they just creations of the divine? Every animal is a creation. The expression is not always the same thing. Expression is a revelation. That's the gist of it. The Rebbe once explained beautifully the same idea. There's the classic example of what we say every morning, that Shnei Ksuvim Achishim Zeh Zeh. Two verses contradict each other, and then comes a third verse and reconciles them. So one of the classic ones is, where did God speak to Moshe from? So in one place it says Ala Kaperis, from above the cover of the ark. Another place, El Moed. Right? There's two psukim. And the Pasha Nosei, at the end it says Ala Kaperis, through the El Moed. So Rashi explains that that's the reconciliation. That the voice started from Bein on the Kaperis. In other words, Shnei Kruvim, right? And it traveled. In other words, it was heard through the oil might, because it could have just been on the Kaperis. You don't hear it anywhere, except if you're standing in there. Or it could be the other way. They only heard it from the oil might, like the other pasuk is Mashman, and it didn't come from the Kaperis. So that's the answer, that it comes from both. The Rebbe asked the question, a very practical question. Why is the Torah playing kunsten here? Torah has to be vague. Say what it is, and sit. You have to have one pasuk like this, one pasuk like that, and then a third pasuk to be machriya. Why confuse us? Good question. Close kasha. The Rebbe's answer is exactly this, by the way. His answer is because each pasuk emphasizes, why taka was it both things? Because the Kaperis emphasizes that it's more on the divine terms. It was a very powerful voice. Oil Moed means that it's more on the terms of the listeners, that it could be heard. So if you only have one or the other, it would not be a total interface, basically. So you have one pasuk emphasizes this strength, that's coming, so to speak, Mumayla. The other one's emphasizing that Lamata could hear it. And the third one explains how it works, because there was both elements to it. So the third pasuk is actually coming to teach us a deeper element, that there is an interface here between two sides. And it's just, it's almost you're answering your question. But the Havana of it is definitely that. The Havana is, why did God limit himself, so to speak, between the two, on the ark, between the two, I like that word, but I don't know if anyone knows, staves, but rods. Yeah, okay, fine. It's not because he wanted, because that's what he wants. He wants a dira b'tachtem. Just like it was mentioned the other day, Shemaim, when Shlomo Melech says to Hashem, Shemaim, Shemaim, heaven and heavens cannot contain you. Avke abayis hazeh. This limited structure could, and the Eibishter answers, b'nechusa, yeah. Exactly what you said, not as a question, as a statement, that it could. That's what I want. It's really, in other words of Ayin Beis, you'd say Shnei Bad Aaron is the Shir Atzmei B'Keach and the Eir HaBligvul for Eir HaGvul. That would be the so-called Sheirish and Dvanim. That's what it is. That the Bligvuldik energy wants to manifest in a Gvuldik way, and that's the 10 hidden spheres. So you could say that's the. It doesn't say that literally, but basically that's the level he's talking about. Okay, so now let's go back. So 1 second. So Ak. So after explaining that, he went into Ak, where Torah really is Ak, not Atzilus. And what is Ak? Adam Kadmon. So Adam Kadmon, he began that Adam Kadmon is the interface, because Adam Kadmon is a very klali. is different than all other levels because it's the blueprint. It's an all-encompassing force. And I elaborated at length about that in chapter 166, 167, actually 165, 166, and 167, 166 rather. Then he went deeper. That's Chetzeni Yasak. Then there's Pnimi Yasak, which he equated with the head top of the Kav, equated with Atik of Adam Kadmon. And here, just like in Kesser, there's two dimensions. Here there's a dimension that also has in it from Ein Seif. It's not just that Ak relates to existence like a klal to a prat, like a blueprint to a structure. The blueprint also has a connection in its premiers to the source. And he said in the parentheses, even to the bligvul, as we learned. And he explained this in all the levels, exactly the details and all the specifics. And then said this is Moshe's discussion, dialogue with Hashem. Hareini nos kvedecha. What's kvedecha? Kovid chof. Chof is keser. Kovid is chochma. Moshe himself is chochma. What's he asking to be shown chochma? No, he's talking about kovid. Chochma as it's informed by keser. But not chetzeni is keser, primi is keser. As he explained at length. So there's keser, like this sukkah, that you can only see up to 20 amas till 20, that's chetzenius keser. But lo shalta beina, what you cannot see, what you cannot comprehend, is that which is beyond 20. That's what Moshe wanted. And that's what Hashem primis keser you do not see. In Chachma, it's the difference in primis Chachma and chetzenius Chachma. Chetzenius Chachma accesses Kesser, the Chetzenius Kesser, in other words, the Kesser that you could relate to, Sherish and Etzalim, and here we're talking about Primius, which is connected to Primius Ak. And Yeshlemer, he said that this is the 32nd path in the 32 paths of Chachma. It refers to Seichel Mufla, a higher level of Seichel, an inner dimension of wisdom, basically, that becomes a container for Primius Atzmus Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So now we've established what he said in put it higher? You put it higher? I'm saying you put it on?
No, I didn't put it on.
It's on, no?
No.
It's not on?
No.
You want to put it on? Yeah, why not? I thought it was on.
No, it's on. Not too much.
What's the degrees on?
74.
Okay, fine. So you put it on?
72 degrees outside.
73 here.
You just have to press on, to on.
No, it's on open.
No, if you're doing anything else, it's not. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the level of Mayim, in Mayim is Yeshua. That's the lower level of Chachma, Chetzenius, Bittul. And then there's Primius Abba, Primius Atik, the higher level of Chachma. And that's also why it's missing a Vav. And the Chaf, the Kovid, the Vav is Hamshacha, that's already as it comes into the 32 paths. And the Chasar Vav, because it's Meichas Tema, it's the concealed wisdom. In the parentheses again, he also said in the concealed wisdom, the unconscious wisdom, there's also two levels. One that's fundamentally concealed, one that's only concealed from the recipients, which we'll learn about later. So bottom line is, as he said above,
What's with the 32 except for the gematria later? And other than that, we didn't really learn about that.
One second. So now we have the Mamutz of Ak, the interface of Ak has two dimensions to it. One, it's a dimension that has a commensurate relationship with existence. That's Arich. That's Chetzenius Ak. That's essentially how Ak is the klal, the blueprint of existence. And then there's Ak, the premise of it has a interface to the, like Atik, to higher dimensions of the divine that have no relationship with existence. All the way to Ir HaBligvul itself. What were you asking?
We didn't really go into these 32 pathways of Chokmah, except that it goes into, I guess it goes into the emotions because it's has Gematria Lev or something.
He didn't say that at all.
You didn't say it before.
I don't remember such a thing. He's not talking about. He defined it. He said
It's the 32nd.
there's 32 paths of Chachma, of wisdom. What's the
I'm trying to
problem?
understand what that means. The 32nd path. I can't.
That's Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. It's the deepest dimension of Chachma. Lo Yoda Ayat. I mean, it's
something added by saying it's the 32 paths. That's the last one I can't put that in my frame.
You're asking why.
I was listening last week. I didn't say
do you know that can you put into your frame that there's a deeper Chachma, there's Pnimius Atzmis Chachma, and there's Chetzenis Chachma?
It's sort of settled because I thought about that for a while.
I'm saying so just, but that you do get that there's two levels of Chachma. So
I get it my own superficial way, yeah.
Okay, no, but I'm saying so the 32nd path is that inner dimension of Chachma. The 31 are the outer, and the 32nd is the deepest level of Chachma. Chachma, remember, is the pathway of how the unconscious becomes conscious, as we've discussed many times. Right? We spoke about Chachma. Chachma has bittul. It's different than Bina. Chachma is only a spark. It's a sense that there's something. Even when it's intelligence, we learn it all the time, but we learn that it's not intelligence as in comprehension. It's more like seeing something. Resonance, hanocha, we said conviction. So Chachma is by nature this place where the unconscious becomes the conscious. You could say where the divine becomes the beginning of intelligence, which is what defines existence, intelligence. So Chachma itself, you can imagine, has many levels. There's the levels that are closer to the ayin of Keser, as he puts it. So it's more unconscious, and there's the levels that are far more revealed and closer to Bina. We learned Chachma. Remember, we learned that there's Yisrael Saba Tfuna. Yisrael Saba was the midas within Chachma. So Chachma has how it begins the process to Bina. Right. But Chachma connects to what's higher than Chachma.
Then you say levels, but you say paths. I think of different.
Why is paths and levels different? I mean, paths are just levels. 32 paths. That's the expression. If you learn Kabbalah, the Pardes explains why they're called paths. But paths are basically channels. 32 channels, strands. So you look, if Chachma is a Yud, so remember, with Yud has the Ketzei HaTachten. That's how it goes toward Bina. That becomes later the Hey. And there's the Ketzei Elyon, the top point, that's more connected to Chachma, to Chesed. So in Chachma there's many levels, the bottom line. He doesn't go through all of them, but generally speaking, Moshe was Chetzenis Chachma. He wanted the inner dimension of Chachma, the one that touches Atik, the one that is beyond the 20.
Yeah, 31.
Could you say that the Lamed basis of Chachma is the Skalus of Chachma Shebachachma, Chachma Shebavina, Chachma Shebadaz?
I don't know necessarily. I'm not sure.
30 different ways.
I'd have to look in the Pardes.
If you do 10 times.
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if it's the spheres within Chachma. They probably have a relationship, but I think it's something else. Because the numbers don't fit. It's the 31, 32. It's not 30.
Right.
If it's 30, it's one thing. Maybe, I don't know. Look, there's a Maram he gives Sharon Nesivas Perek Vov. Talks about this. Is the Pardes has elaborates what are the 32 paths of Chachma.
Each one.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's 50 gates of Bina. Doesn't end.
Well, the 50 gates are it's probably like what we do by Sivir Saimer, no? So
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Bina has its own gates. It's probably connected. Listen, the spheres are always channels, so they're always connected within each other. Why is it 50? What's the 50? 49 we have, and the 50th we don't have. Yeah.
The 31 is the Kaidal, and the 32nd was the inner dimension.
There's nothing to speculate. There's I can give you right now. We'll show you. I have right here the Sefer. I can tell you exactly where it says it all. Because it'll say by name every Nesiv. Nesiv HaAleph, Nesiv HaBeis, Nesiv HaGimel. That's how he counts them.
Explains what they are.
Exactly. Yeah, you asked me before, and I say again, yes. My friends, there's a very vast Torah out there, and there are things that are spelled out in specific detail. The Pardes is one of his things. He spells out all these levels.
It's not cryptic.
You can understand it. No, the Pardes is relatively understandable. Not in our generation, you have to be over 40 to look, because you won't understand it. Once upon a time, before 40, maybe they may have been able to.
40 is not
And also over 40 is when you do all day, you do nothing else but learn Torah. If all day you're doing shtusim, I guarantee you, it's better to learn Kabbalah than to. Some say I can't learn Kabbalah, so I'm going to do things that are dvarim. You have to also know the generation, like the Rebbe would say. The Baba Tech is going to learn, you know, like they say, Minig Avesena. Good, Minig Avesena means you did what they did. You learn Torah all day, so you don't need more light. Fine, there's no more darkness, however, so it's a different world.
In Chayim, that's what they help me about how dangerous it is for certain people to get too close to God, like the sons of Aaron. We don't have that problem nowadays. We just can't get there.
First of all, we're not going on our own places. Once the Rizal said, Mitzvah legal zesa chochma, and the Alter Rebbe and Baal Shem Tov and Alter Rebbe and the Rabbeim revealed Primus HaTorah, the time came. It's a different world. That's number one. We have direct authority here now. I'm not going to our own svaras. And in the Hanami, even learning Kabbalah, direct, straight Kabbalah, you could do it. It's part of Torah, but far easier. When Ashlag came by, Ashlag's grandson came by the dollars. She asked the Rebbe to come out with a Kol Kera learning Zohar. So the Rebbe was not sure. The Rebbe said, we have our derech. He said, not a pashta. Everyone has their path. Which means he didn't tell him not to do it. He said, our path is through Chassidus Chabad, that's Kabbalah. That's how we were Makabal, how to learn it. So the Rebbe said, how could I come out? It's something the Alter Rebbe is a different approach. But the Rebbe gave him bracha, actually gave him extra $1 and said he should be made for Primus HaTorah. It's not a pashta, by the way, is a completely legitimate thing. There's different paths, like different nuschayos of David. No one ever said that different nuschayos was, God forbid, not legitimate. There's different levels once you change to one.
The beginning of the Siddur, our nusach is good for everybody.
That's a different story, yeah, but it's not the way the gloating you're just exhibiting is not the kavanah of that Hagdama.
The gate in the base of Midrash.
Look, if you turn this into a superiority, popularity contest, then it's a problem. I don't see it that way. Nara Pashta means the bottom line is that when the Moroccan shluchim asked the Rebbe what they should teach the Moroccan children after getting the 50s, should they teach them minhagim of Chabad? Because they have minhagim, they have old minhagim. The Rebbe said, God forbid. These are their minhagim, the dress, payas, everything. Satmar that. But the respect for tradition, it's not it's only one way. There are things that are. We're not talking also. You want to choose how you want to do. That's your business. We're talking about there wouldn't be 12 shvatim if we didn't have 12 paths.
Satmar is a new thing just 50 years ago. The Moroccans they had for 2,000 years ago.
Right. No, but I'm saying even the Samad when they said payas, they grew up with payas in a shtreimel. The Rebbe told them. He told them clearly. He said not to change that. Some change anyway. That was their business.
Hungry went to the shtreimel and payas.
Fine. I'm just saying but there are such sheiros from the Rebbe to people because the Rebbe was not something that's the Dover Kodesh that became a minute.
He asked them he told them not to change the levush. The Babachers they should keep down the Yerushalayim.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, the point is that. Okay, so let's continue on here. Diversity is beautiful, part of Judaism, just for the record. Right, and also even within Chabad, diversity is, as long as it's going by the general guidelines of the certain methodology the Rebbe established. The Rebbe encouraged diversity. The Rebbe did not discourage diversity. You could see the whole structure, how he set it up. Never led. There's certain things that you say, there's foundations, fine.
Brings out everybody's talents.
For sure. You see this in so many things, in Mitzvahim and other things. The Rebbe's the general gist he gave us. The specifics he didn't always say to do it this way. There's things that you have to. How many answers from the Rebbe? Al-Asar. You have to go on location and know what the conditions are, and based on that, that's how you determine. So Kuf Samaches, right? So chapter 168, page 338. The Inyan HaMamutzadak, and this Inyan HaMamutzadak, after establishing what we spoke about in inner Ak, outer Ak dimension of Ak, and inner dimension of Ak, he's now going back to understand this klal. So it looks like he's talking about Chetsenius Ak again now. Inam Mutzdak Mashu Bichin's Klal Gabe Elamis, he made that very clear that that's the Chitzenius Ak, like the Arich. So now is this Inyan Mutza, this Inyan of Ak's interface that it encompasses Klal Gabe Elamis. Let's drive the point home again. We always like to practically apply it to ourselves. Imagine you gave instructions to people and you didn't give them a blueprint, a plan. They'd have to come running back to you. Mistakes could be made. Think of all the impacts of not having a business plan, not having a one place, a master document in any area, business, personal life, whatever it is. You don't have a master general plan, a blueprint. Blueprint is an excellent example for an architect. A blueprint, the building is not going to be built properly. There's no way. Even if the architect was standing there all day, there's so many things that he calculated that already, the calculations that are in there. So the idea of a klal taprat is in a world the way God created it. It could have been different. It's the way they created our world is a very necessary step in order. So it makes total sense. Someone asks, so where's the klal in the shtalshlos? That's Ak. Ak is that blueprint. So you have now a location for it. So just think of it that way. Ak institutes that idea of a klal. Actually, it goes the other way around. Because there's Ak, that's why we now have the ability to make a business plan. So next time you talk to someone, say, you know why you can make a business plan? Because the Elam of Ak. He says, what's Ak? Oh, you got to learn Ayin Beis for that. So we can basically take credit for every business plan, every outline, every wireframe, every blueprint that exists. I like that. That's the Ak in people's lives. And it's a critical component because that's what creates order. Skip Ak and go straight from, let's say, Ein Sof to the worlds. You're skipping this master schematics, basically. The specs. Specs. What do you think? It's good. I think it's a good way to look at it. So now he's going to explain this further. Ha'inyan hu. Clearly, you see, he's going back to the topic, and he's saying, "What's the inyan in this?" And now we're getting into time and space. The thing we've all been waiting for. We've already been discussing this a bit. Time and space. Ha'inyan hu. The inyan in this is the inikol mashnisal be'el mustachas hazman. Everything that was created in the world is under the governance of time. Right, is governed by time. The EF Shalias Elam Blazman Umokim. There can be no world, basically no existence, what he's trying to say, no entity that we can relate to without time and space. Shazel Mitzvah, that's the Mitzvah, that's the fabric of existence, time and space. We need explanation for that? Let's explain it in a moment. Why not? In other words, think of existence, think of our life without time and space, and you can't even imagine it. We are always occupying some space. You're sitting now here. Later you'll be at home. You have your homes, workplaces, streets, places we travel. There's nothing that does not have space in our lives. Same thing with time. We're always in the moment of time. It's either Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, certain hour, certain second. So time and space are not incidentals. They happen to be the definition of existence. Now, when we develop technology, let's say a telephone or an airplane, we learn to bridge or so-called transcend to some extent the general limits of time and space, but not completely. It just means I could speak to someone now in Australia a split second, so it would have taken so much and so much time for us to reach each other. So now we've bridged the time. That doesn't mean we're out of time. It just means the time is just like I'm standing near you. So it's a split second instead of hours or years or whatever it may be. A plane, if you go by boat, you walk, you can only reach that far. So we've technologies and communications have not eliminated time and space. What they've done is they've eliminated the breadth of time and space. In other words, the length that things would take. But not that we have not entered a world out of time and space. At least on an ostensible level. Just to explain how we are governed. We live in a world of time and space, and then we age. Who's not subject to the changes of time? We age. That's a simple fact. Every second we're aging. So in a way, time is even more impact on us than space. Space, you could say, that doesn't necessarily impact me if I'm in this room or in that room. But time is eroding us. Every second we get a little older. And you start needing reading glasses. And then there's other things that start impacting you. But even if nothing impacts you, the fact is you get older every second. So for it to be nicker, to be obvious, it takes time to see. But even mitinik, mishanel, maschil is yavish. I just want to explain. He says tachazman. Let's explain what it means exactly. So we are basically under the governance of time and space, and nobody has mastered the art to get out of it. However, obviously, we're going to go into ruchnius, where ruchnius play a role. And what about the neshama after it leaves this earth, so to speak, as it travels on? So I'm not eliminating that. I was talking purely now. World as we know it, the parameters of existence, time and space, and it's also physics. Time, space. They say time, space, man are the three things. But also it's elam, shana, nefesh. Space, shana is time. Elam, space, shana, nefesh, spirit. So it's you, and there's the time and space in which you exist. Those are the three interactions that impact us all the time, and all in every place. Even when we'll have, let's call it zero conductivity. And they'll be able to access literally every piece of information, anytime, anywhere. In other words, they'll eliminate all. There will be no longer time to download anything. It will be immediate. It'll just mean that you've achieved. I don't know if that's ak. Now you've achieved zero time resistance, but that doesn't mean we're out of time and space. It just means that you've done things very quickly. It's immediate. That's what it really means. That you've just are able to eliminate. The time and space doesn't necessarily mean that it has to take 1,000 years. It could take a second. That's also time. But we're never going to get out of the second. The world that we exist in, time is always going to be time. We're going to obviously now have an exercise and understanding above time and what that means, and ruchnius and higher, etc. But I wanted to we have to start with where we are. What I just described, everybody can relate to. Now we're going to get to understand deeper stuff.
In a physical sense, if we're able to build our spaceship that goes there as fast as
speed of light, let's say. Yeah. So speed of light is also speed. There's numbers, 200 and whatever thousand miles an hour. That's its speed. Miles a second, rather. 240 something thousand miles a second. That's speed. There's a speed.
But if you go,
according to physics, by the way, if you go faster than the speed of light, you can go back in time.
Right.
That's, some say, is impossible because time. Some say light is the parameters of existence. But hypothetically, let's say you have super science fiction films, and they had it. So first of all, even going back in time doesn't mean there's no time. It just means you've learned to go back to minus time. It doesn't mean we're out of time. It just means you can go back to where your grandfather was, but you can't go back to where there was no time. Just for the record, even that just means because you're just going. Let's say if you go 1 mile faster than the speed of light, you're technically going faster than time. But again, it's still within time and space. You're not going to be in a place that's outside of time and space. He said earlier, I don't remember where it was, very, very much. Remember the chapter he said that we can't really conceive of something outside of time and space. Not really altogether. He says, Nevraim cannot conceive it. But we're going to talk about it. Listen, we're just getting going here.
I mean, quantum has instantaneous...
But instantaneous is not out of time. Instantaneous does not mean out of time.
Even if it doesn't take time, it's at a time.
Right, it's instantaneous. But out of time means something that's not bound by any time. Nobody says that. The truth is the interface we're talking about is connecting time to outside of time.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but quantum is not out of time. Why is it out of time? Because it happens instantaneous. I just said something instantaneous just means it's immediate. So what? Why is that out of time?
No, well,
because it doesn't take a lot of time. There's a lot of things instantaneous. Right here, there are things that are instantaneous. So what? That doesn't mean it's not bound by time.
Panim is an act sort of touches that area, but it doesn't necessarily...
Well, first of all, he's not... Where you jump, we're not up to Panim Yisak here. And he's talking about time. You're talking about quantum mechanics? I do not see that out of time at all.
But as touching out of time, it's like...
Well, you're saying something that's instant... Is it split second is like outside of time because it's split second?
It's not a split second. It's no time.
So no time means that it's outside of time?
I don't know what that means.
Why would you say no time is outside time?
I don't know what it means to touch the symptom, but not, certain things.
Well, you're right now, but this is your own imagination. You saw this in a mimer somewhere? You saw that Tzimtzum or Pnimi Yisak is touching beyond time, or this is your speculation now?
It's touching.
But where did you get this from? Did you learn this?
It's touching before the.
No, but did you learn this somewhere, or you're speculating?
Didn't we just learn that?
No, we learned that.
Touches.
But what does it have to do with time? That there's godliness is beyond time. We understand that. We're talking about our existence now. I would not jump anywhere. We're learning it inside. Let's see what he says. Because you jump now, you're going to distort anything that we're going to learn. I learned this as a new thing. Like I've never.
Opened it up for discussion. So.
It's open, but I'm just saying to you, where you right now. All you said that everything is tachas zman u'makom. U'ba'elam esalyenim, and in the higher worlds. Now he means, in other words, in the spiritual worlds. Hanu elam is biyah haruchnim. Meaning the spiritual worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah. There's also space there. Except space there is not in a state of matter and substance like our space. Like all the philosophers agreed, that above the ninth sphere, remember in the image of the way the Rambam describes how the cosmos work. So there's Galgalim, where the Earth is in the first sphere, the Moon is in the second, the Sun is in the third. They orbit, but a Galgal is an actual sphere. He sees them like spheres. So instead of, it's not really described today in modern science that way, but you see them as spheres, and the different planets, the sun is in its own sphere, and the sphere is what turns. And then there's a Galgal HaYemi. It's a sphere that turns once a day. It's a whole thing. But Galgal HaChi is considered the highest sphere, the ninth. It says that above it, they say there's no space at all. What that means is not that there's no space. There's no physical space. There's no physical space. Only spiritual space. So we once discussed this. First of all, a few chapters back. You remember? We spoke about Mokum like this. 1 second. You remember where it was? It wasn't so far. What chapter was it? It started here on the right.
We once discussed what happens if we get to the furthest planet.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to discuss that in a moment. Where was that chapter? Oh, here we go. No, that was the one. I'm sorry. That was the Chokrim that said. I'm confused. But the Galgal also, he mentioned the Galgal also much earlier. Oh, that's a different thing. Okay. So let me just say what it explained here. This would mean technically that if you sent a spaceship and hypothetically that had endless amount of fuel, so it doesn't run out of fuel, and just goes and goes and goes in a straight line up, what's going to happen? What will it hit? So beyond the planets, beyond the solar system, beyond all solar systems. So even science today speculates that it will continue to go and go. And some say, based on Einstein's theories, that it's just like the Earth. If you went on a ship around the oceans, you come back to the original point because
so you
it's
can't
a
get out of the last sphere, so you have to go around.
Right. In other words, there's no such thing as endless space.
Like the mouse and the wheel. You keeps on turning.
Yeah. So it goes. So you go to. So you reach. In other words, but you're not going to feel like you reach the edge. Like here, like they thought that they'd fall off the earth if you went to the horizon. You don't fall off the earth. You just continue. It's a sphere. So the same thing.
We're inside a ball.
Yeah, exactly. So you reach there. You're not going to feel it. And remember, it's not that. If you get beyond that, outside is also space. There's no space. That's the parameter of space is existence as we know it. That's it. That's what it means. So higher than that is not physical space anymore. So higher doesn't mean beyond it because there is no beyond it. It means that that's the parameter. That's the limit of space. Space has its limit. And God did create the measurement. We say yesh tavkuf shana ben rakia. There's a certain measurement involved. It's not infinite, period. Which is fine. No one has a problem with that. In science today, they talk about an expanding universe. So they talk how fast it's expanding. But nobody talks about an infinite universe. They talk about an expanding universe. Expands. They say it was concentrated once like this, and then it's been again expanding, and it continues to expand at a certain rate. Whatever the measurements are. Completely stims with Torah. There's no problem with that at all. It's an expansion, but the expansion has limit because it began with limit. There's no such thing as number one becoming infinite. It's just a matter of how far. It can go far. It can go very far. And we're talking about this could be trillions and trillions and trillions of miles. The spaceship could, as a matter of fact, for all practical purposes, it can be so huge and vast that spaceship could be going and not even hitting that so-called edge. And who knows how far it is. But still, that's all just a matter of space. It's just a matter of a large space. So someone will say, Mayim she'ein lahem sof. Yeah, the Mayim appears like it has no sof, but it has a sof, technically. But for human being purposes, it's endless. So, okay, fine. So now he's establishing...
He said that beyond that would be Yitzira. So...
He didn't say, he meant that as a joke.
No, I understand, but that's sort of true, isn't it?
No, not at all. Why? So where's Yitzir Ruchnis? Right after? You're trying to play Yitzir Ruchnis in physical... He made a joke, and you're taking his joke seriously?
He said there's no Mokum Geshem.
I understand. Yeah.
We're now going to understand spiritual space. He's moving now into spiritual space. So he says no Mokum Gashmi, but Ruchni there is. He's going to explain it now. The Efsher Sheyuvan, and perhaps we can explain it. Al derech mashakosab l'Likutei Torah ba'habir d'seis asis. It's a very fundamental piece in Likutei Torah. This chapter is very, very fundamental b'chlal in understanding spirituality. Yeah. So he says like this: in Likutei Torah, in the beer of seis asis, which is in Parshas Tzavim, the Haftarah there, shemetzinu ba'adam kama keiches she'en b'mokem echad. So in that beer, the Likutei Torah says that we find the human being several faculties, a number of faculties that are in one place. For example, intelligence, desire, thought. They're all in the mind. Now he's going to explain in the parentheses what he means by that. Right. But let me just, to make things simpler, and I'm going to go back to what he says here, just to make it simpler, because he says that also there. In your mind, you have ideas. How many ideas fit into the brain? So we all know that if you open up a brain, it's not like opening up a closet and you're going to find salt and pepper and a bunch of items. Right? Ideas rest in the brain, they reside in the brain, and they reside side by side, and not only side by side, you could say in a sense they're beyond space. That's what he's trying to explain, something that is beyond space. That's why there's no such thing as saying that you'll have a limit of how many things. Like for example, there's a limit of how many things I could put on this table, or in the side of a certain box. A large box, more. But would you say how many ideas can a brain contain? So you could argue, one second, why is that different than what we spoke about outer space? Maybe it's a lot, but it's still a limit. But the bottom line is, they don't occupy space. That's the key. Ideas don't occupy space. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And the idea that, let's say, 5 feet is more than 4 feet, are not like, this is in this, and there's this, a bunch of things. They reside side by side. It really means that he's going to give an example how it's higher than physical space, but there's spiritual space. So spiritual space means there's parameters, but it doesn't occupy a space that contradicts another object from being in that same space. That's really what he wants to explain.
Even one idea could be larger than the brain.
Yeah. So that first lesson. So he's saying, so we see in one place, Mokem Echad. For example, 2 people can't sit in one chair, right? If you sit in your chair, I can't sit into your chair. But that doesn't mean 2 people can't feel for each other and love each other, and that transcends space. But that doesn't mean there's no space. It just means it's spiritual space. But let's read inside. Just want to start thinking. Just get your mind to start thinking like this now. Nira hakavona sham. Nira, it appears, it seems that the intention there he means Likutei Torah. Ala rotzon shu primis hamidus. Why is he saying this? Because rotzon, we learned before, rotzon doesn't reside anywhere. So how could the Alter Rebbe say in Likutei Torah rotzon resides where the seichel is? We said rotzon doesn't have makim, rotzon is makif. Rotzon is everywhere equally. So he's saying that for pashtus it means nira, that the rotzon doesn't mean rotzon as we desire, it means primis hamidus. the inner dimension of feelings. That there could be, a person could have feelings that intelligence dictates that contradict natural feelings. Like you may, does he say an example?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, for example, to stretch out your leg into very hot waters in order for healing. So naturally, you wouldn't want to do that. Why would you want to burn yourself? But because your mind tells you this is necessary for healing, you'll go against, you'll defy your own natural feeling. He says, so that's what he means by Ratzon. He doesn't mean Ratzon as in the desire that he talked about before the Makif. He's talking about a Ratzon, an intelligence informing your emotions and therefore imposing it on the natural emotions. So it's like almost ordering the foot to go into the water even though it's hot. Okay, so the things that here's giving the opposite example. There you're putting your foot into.
That's the feeling we get all the time.
Yeah, he's not saying guilt. He didn't say much.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Anyway,
Stop projecting. 1 second. She gave an example, the opposite. That's something that's painful that you'll do, and here's the opposite: something that's pleasurable that you won't do, because your seichel tells you that it's not appropriate. So something gives you pleasure. Naturally, your midas tivim say yes. Your rotzen, basically, that's defined by the midas shabeseichel. In other words, the midas shabeseichel, the seichel is saying, primis hamidus rather, midas shabela, prechiva seichel, chiva seichel says, primis hamidus, you shouldn't do it. V'chein lisanek bedover tzar. Another example, to have pleasure in something that's painful. K'may b'tainis v'sigufim shem tikun l'nafshe. So here is a third example. This is similar to putting your foot in, but it's like a combination of both examples, because he's using now, there you're not doing something pleasurable, because here you're doing something, not only is it not mitzayed, it actually gives you pleasure. Because you realize it's for the tikkun nafshe, so even though it's a tiny, it's fasting, or sigufim, what's sigufim we call? Afflictions. Because it's a repair for your nefesh, so to have pleasure from something that would naturally be painful, and deprivation, like fasting, betainis v'sigufim, fasting and affliction, because it's the same tikkun l'nafshe. Shekol zehu min haratzon shal pi haseichel. This is saying, this is the meaning in Likutei Torah. This is all from the desire that is informed by the intelligence. V'hu chayes hamidus, and this is what gives that basically you can say energizes the midas, the energy of the midas. Like it says in Likutei Torah elsewhere, this is the first Maimer Baal Escha, the first Baal Escha, or Mavor Makamacha, and explained elsewhere. So this parenthesis is really not so relevant to our discussion here. He just wanted to explain the word Ratzon. What means Ratzon? Machshava kol b'moyach. What does it mean that Seichel? Ratzon, Machshava kol b'moyach. What does it mean by Ratzon? So he's explaining it means the awareness that certain things are good for you or bad for you, even though naturally you would feel otherwise. That's what Ratzon means here. Yeah, it's interesting because it's very consistent. Remember he spoke that midas tivim. Actually, he called that Ratzon. It's a good question. Remember when he spoke about natural love? Let's say for your child, that's not midas, because it's not midas informed by seichel. He called that Ratzon. So Tivim actually good. That's your natural Ratzon. Your natural desire and your natural midas are one thing. The natural love of a parent to a child, for example, is not considered midas. It's considered Ratzon. That expresses itself in a feeling. What's midas? Midas is when seichel gets involved. When the seichel is telling you there's something you should enjoy, something you should repel. So it stems very much with that discussion. Remember that? That was it was on this side of the page a long time ago. No, it was.
I don't know you know which part's on this page. I'm looking at which sequences.
Well, because you learn many svarim, we're learning only one sefer. So it's just a matter of what side of the page is. Now the big chiddush is to know what chapter it is. It's in the Nuns. It's in chapter Nun and Aleph or something like that. Talking about the first place when he starts talking about seichel and midas as a keches by Mailamat actually. Very relevant. Seichel Limit is my Elamat. Mokim. Okay. We'll keep that in mind. So let's go back to Likutei Torah, because he's coming to explain here Mokim Ruchni. That's really what he wants to explain here.
Keep it in sight.
V'chein b'ksiva. B'ksiva is Eza Seichel. And the same thing. So one example was that in the brain, Kamei Seichel, in the Mayach, everything in the brain, there's a whole bunch of things in the brain. Let's see where he's going with this. So I don't want to elaborate till we read finish first. V'chein b'ksiva is Eza Seichel. The writing of some type of intelligence. The writing of an intelligent idea. There are 4 different faculties, like he writes there in Likutei Torah. He doesn't explain this here. What are the 4 faculties? I don't remember. Likutei Torah, what does he say? So when you write, there's the power of the actual writing, the wisdom in writing, but there's also wisdom coming. What are you going to write? It's all in the power of writing. He wants to explain how many things can be functioning in one space, to demonstrate that it's not physical space but spiritual space. That's really what he's going to. So let me continue. And now, every faculty has its space. So every faculty in these 4 faculties, let's say in writing, there you have intelligence there, and you have the intelligence. Look, for example, in writing, I think he says there's an intelligence in knowing how to write a letter. Like when you learn now ABC, you learn how to write Aleph, Beis, Gimel. That's not the intelligence of what you're going to convey. That just means you know how to write an A or a B. Then there's an intelligence of how to combine the letters to express an idea. That's all happening in the same act. It's not like 4. That's not like 4 different craftsmen coming together. One of them writes the Aleph, the other one says what to write, and the third, it's one intelligence all going through one channel, expressing one thing, one time. So how is that possible? So he's saying because every faculty has its own space, but they're not nitfas begeshem. The reason they could all reside side by side is because they're not manifest and they're not contained by the physical. That's why they can reside side by side. But they're clearly different faculties. So it's like different talents going into one act, really. Like I said, it's not like 3 different people. One person throws the stone because he's strong. Another one is wise and tells him where to throw it. A third one tells him how strong to throw it. You have one act, you have all these faculties, all these things are happening at once. Shows you it's different forces, but none of them are defined by physical space. That's why they all can be in one. They could all take place in one area. Maybe wise to learn this Likutei Torah inside. To be honest, maybe we'll do that to really see, because he says Efsher Yuvan, so it means this Likutei Torah Kseisos is very. I've learned it many times, but better to learn it inside. We'll probably really appreciate it. But let's continue meanwhile for now. So not that there aren't differences between forces at work, let's say when you're writing, or in your mind, you have all these things going on in your mind. It's just that they're not nitfas begeshem. So when you talk about physical space, 2 things, so let's say 2 people say, well, let's meet somewhere. So there, 2 entities that are in physical space come together and they meet. They're both physically side by side. Here you're talking about forces coming together that don't occupy physical space. And that's why they can literally be in the same space. Actually, I would suggest, can you give me the look at the table right here? The second one. Let's look inside. Why not? Abir de Seisasis. Savim. Okay. There's Seisasis and the beer. There's the beer. Yeah, beer Seisasis. So let's learn inside. I'm going to just read quickly with the piece here. Yeah, look, interesting. He's coming to explain the difference between Seviv and Mamala. Since Seviv common is everywhere, so why do we call it Seviv? So he says it's because Helam and Gili.
That's what he says about Shriya.
Im ken ech iskara velasechel mashenedi sheshli. Okay, yeah, it is good. Very, very important to read this. Let me read it inside and I'll translate. It's a very interesting piece. She says, to understand this, we have to begin the difference between Mamala and Seviv. L'cheda in a movement, seemingly it's not understood. Since Seviv doesn't mean that it's surrounding from above, right? That it's found below just like above. Only differences between concealment and revelation. So in other words, everything is here. Seviv Kalam is here, Mamala Kalam is here, everything is here. In Cain, we have a question. How can we, how would you translate Iskara Velasechel? How could you explain?
Rational.
How could you explain? Yeah, but also Iskara, how could you, but Iskara also means make it easier to understand. How can we explain to some extent? Mashaneda, what's known, Sheyesharibu Revav is Bechinas Madregas Revav is Bechinas. That there are tens of thousands.
We grasp.
Yeah, grasp. How can we grasp somewhat intelligently? Iskara V'Sechel usually means that it's how do we bring it closer to our understanding?
Graspable.
Yeah. That there are tens and tens of thousands of levels, and Tzimtzumim Rabim, and a multitude of Tzimtzumim, Sheinim V'Sheinim, and different ones, Acha Bom B'Chinas Seviv, till it comes from a state of Seviv, which is concealed, Meshu B'Chinas Ahelam, the B'Chinas Mamala, Meshu B'Chinas Gili. To a state of Mamala, that's Gili. Ma'achash HaKol B'Mokem Echad. Everything is happening in one place. You're not saying Seviv is there and Mamala is here. It's all happening here. It's just the levels of revelation and concealment. Ve'ein beineim richuk mokem. And there's no distance at all between them. V'klum choser. Nothing is missing. Rak yitziyah me'ahelam elagili. The only thing that's missing is that it hasn't come out in a revealed way. See, how could you explain all those multitude of levels that we learn? Atzilus, everything we're talking about, exactly what we're discussing. Where is Yitzhira? Where is Atzilus? Where are all these hundreds and thousands of levels? They're all here. How do we explain it with Seichel? When the only difference, he says, it's Helam and Gili. In other words, there's no real difference in space because they're all here with us.
We're never told that it's all there yet. You know that.
All right, but here he's saying it's beferish. No, here he says it's beferish. So we say, let's say, how many neshamas have been on earth since the beginning of time? Billions, right? Maybe trillions. Whatever. Billions for sure. We have already 7 billion now. So if you added up every person that ever lived, so where are all these neshamas? They're saying they're in Gan Eden. But we know Gan Eden is not up there, it's all here. So basically it's just a matter of revealing and concealing. So he's saying, how do you explain this in Seichel? All these levels. That's the question here. It's a very blunt question. Surprising that's L'Kutei Torah, right? But that's what he asks. How is it possible to say so many of tens and tens and tens of thousands of levels and simsumim rabim b'shenim adein ketz v'tachlis kaneda, all happening in one area? How are we supposed to understand this? So, of course, all of us are big experts on spirituality. You could say, what do you mean, spirituality? What's the big thing? They all exist. But he still asked the question. The Alter Rebbe is asking this question. So he's going to answer with what he's using here to explain Mokim Ruchni. Acha Inyan, he says, Yuvan al derech Moshe Psari Echza. The Inyan in this is the explanation of an example from our flesh. We behold. In other words, something that in our own. What he's trying to do is not to say that we can't relate to the idea that spiritual things can all be in one place. He wants to give some seichel. Give me some example for it. Something we use Asius some words to explain it. Do you understand what he's saying?
Own experience.
Yeah, from experience, right. Shenida bechush we actually see ba'adam hagashmi, in a physical human being, sheyesh l'seichel v'chachma l'haskil kol davar asher yaseh, that he has intelligence and wisdom to conceive of anything that he does. In other words, we're intelligent creatures and we behave according to intelligence. Alter Rebbe assumes that's what it is, that we do that. Yeah. Well, lefi ma sheskimu chachmase kach neiter etzene. So you see that it's taka stims with it. And according to what his mind, his schema, would say, his mind agrees to. In other words, what's agreeable intelligently, kach neiter etzene. That's how his desire is inclined to la'asis hadavar ahu shechayav chachmase, to do the thing that his intelligence compels him to do. Shekamay shechayav chachmase l'davar ahu, just like his intelligence compels him to that thing, kach yesh le'rotzen v'tshukah le'isei davar she'hachacham minaheges es harotzen kaneda. Oh, yeah, basically saying that first you understand something is valuable, and then that compels and causes you to actually want and desire it. Ratzon, want, and chukka is a desire for it.
Hashem should desire.
Yeah. Why? Because the intelligence is governing and controlling the desire. Kaneda.
It's the Ratzon that he spoke about in the past.
So that's why I'm wondering, why is it even a nida? It's mamish beferish here.
Right.
So I guess the nida is not that, the nida is that it's seichel shebamid, that's midas atzmin. I don't know, let me see further. And according to this desire, machashav, he thinks, and mahared, another form of thought. Tanya says hirud is desire, is rotzen that's not willing.
Casual.
Is that comes automatic. That's why hirud averika. And rotzen is when it's, okay, yeah. How to conclude that which arose in his desire? Shepulus hadover eina nigmeres eladai hirud. Eishis machshavte. So he's bringing another level in here. In other words, you need to have the desire that it concentrates how to finish a job, which requires you should think about the aces. Okay, it means that he's basically focusing and concentrating on the details of what his desire is, and that is what brings it down to action. In other words, it's not just enough to have your intelligence. That's what drives it. It's not enough just to have the rotzen, which is now I want it. You have to now concentrate on what it is that you want and how you're going to implement it. So you already have three forces at work here in any type of intelligent behavior. That's what so far he's saying. I guess that's what he's leading to.
Same idea like Mike Charlotte on the left.
Yeah, one second. Because the letters are lower than the rotzen. And now the place where seichel resides, where does intelligence reside? It's in the brain. And also the place where resides your rotzen, your desire, is also in the mind. That's what he means here. That the nida. That rotzen doesn't mean just rotzen, he means the rotzen, actually, which stems with what he just says, the rotzen that the seichel is mechayev.
It's a different type of rotzen. It's more than.
But you see, the interesting thing is, if you learn the Kutz Torah, it's obvious that nida is what the Rashab is saying. It's obvious because he just said that rotzen. He doesn't mean just rotzen. He means a desire that's informed by intelligence. I'm not sure. I have to read that again. Okay. And also the thinking, concentrating how to implement my desire. So let's take an example. Your mind tells you that it's good for your soul, good for your intelligence, good for your life to learn Ayin Beis. Okay? No, it's second. That awakens up a desire to do so. Because, hey, this is good for me. And a desire, a strong yearning. But then you still need to do it. So your mind now your rotzen works out the details. Okay, how am I going to do this? I'm going to go to this in this class, open this in the sefer, and I'm going to apply myself. All this is happening in the mind. All these 3 steps that I just described are happening in the mind. That's what he's saying now. So, let's continue. I'm glad we learned this inside because it's important. Everything is happening in your mind. It's not happening in your fingers, it's not happening in your nose, it's all happening in the same area.
Chochmah down to machshava.
Yeah, exactly. Chochmah, rotzen, machshava, basically. Right. That's what he said here. I think he said that, right? Yeah. Seichel, rotzen, and machshava. That's why when you read here in Ayin Beis, you don't fully. That's what it means. Seichel, rotzen, and machshava. But machshava means like here, right? Exactly. So it's all happening there. But Harishebameyach echad, meaning in one mind, in one brain, yesh be gimel mini hislapshus. In one mind, there's 3 types of manifestations. First, it manifests in wisdom, in the intelligence. The intelligence, in turn, manifests in the desire. And the ratzon then manifests in the letters of the thought. And everything in one place, and that's the brain. So we see here an example from our lives of many levels, from cause to cause, all in one place. What's the reason for this? Because the manifestation of a spiritual thing is not like the manifestation of a physical thing. Because the physical thing occupies space. What does that mean? When a higher thing manifests into a lower thing, so the lower thing is many levels lower than it. Why does it just say Maila Mata is higher and lower? Yeah, I know what it means. He means basically, in other words, when something that's a higher level suddenly occupies the space that a lower level was on, so the lower level moves down a step. They don't reside side by side. Let's say that Rebbe walks into the room. So those that are on lower level are going to walk away. They're not going to reside side by side. He's now occupying that space. So lower level is now a lower level. Because the hierarchy of space, as we know it, is that when something higher is higher, something lower is lower. They don't reside side by side. You can't have something higher and lower together. You don't have a second floor.
Except in the Maya.
That's Ruchni. We're talking about Makam Gashmi now. Gashmi. Real Makam Gashmi, the second floor and the first floor do not reside side by side. That's what means the second floor.
Here, right?
Right. That's exactly what he's saying.
We have examples in technology where you have apps residing all in the same place.
So that would be an example. Yeah. Apps would be an example of Makam Ruchni. Correct. Because
radio waves.
Correct. No, but you see, you have to distinguish: is it really moved over to Ruchni, or is it just that we've managed to fit things like into one resistor, so it's really just so close?
Right.
I think it's a good question. I would think it is Ruchni because depends how you define Ruchni. Because the brain is also what's really residing. We have different neurons. They're similar to technology. But technology is actually similar to the way the synapses work in the brain.
But that's just a reflection, Gashmis, of Ruchni's thing. It's not exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely helps us understand L'maylam and Makam Gashmi. That's for sure. The Rebbe brings that in Sichos. That the communications, radio and TV, help us understand L'maylam and Makam Zman, because you see that they transcend the regular. They just don't transcend completely. We haven't yet gotten to completely out of space and time. By the way, all this, when we're speaking Mokim and Zman Ruchni, we're not saying that it's not Mokim and Zman. We're just saying it's Ruchni. We're just saying it's not Gashmi. That's all. Yeah, this should be the first thing I would learn Chassidus with anyone. Understanding Mokim and Zman. How we understand it. Okay, but let's continue to look at the Torah.
How many neshamas can fit into this room, right?
Yeah. One second. So let's continue. So we see here, Gashmi is basically space in the physical universe. One space contradicts another space. Basically, that's what you have to say. Two people compete; they're competing over the same space. And in Ruchnis, they don't compete; they can reside in the same space. Because in Ruchnis, they're not defined by physical space. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, but then you have the whole idea of nichva, brecha chupas eshavere. We spoke about that.
Okay, so that's because there's Ruchni's space problems. 1 second, we didn't get there. Talking about that when a Talmud Chacham is each Talmud Chacham will have his own canopy, so one shouldn't get burned by the other. But that's just because. 1 second, I am sure that's going to be qualified. That's because of Malkim Ruchni you have this. But let's not go there. Let's talk now. He's giving this example where it does work side by side. That would need explanation.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, but that would be like Shammai and Hillel in Chesed and Gvura, not Tzilas. Chesed is not Gvura. But that's physical. That's not because they don't reside side by side. The first step is we're trying to understand physical to spiritual. Then we'll deal with the spiritual.
Yeah, that's because ultimately
there's levels there too. That's why.
The performance of a mitzvah brings it down to Gashmi, so that's what is the problem. Not maybe in Rukni.
Okay. So by Gashmius, the Gashmius manifest. That's why when you have a thing, 1 second, I skipped something. In contrast, spiritual something spiritual does not occupy space on its own. Only thing it does, it manifests in particular parameters. That's how he's defining it. The mokim there is only a keli to manifest the energy of the Ruchni. But it's not that the Ruchni manifests in any physical space. So the parameter of space and spiritual, what he's saying, is just to contain. For example, when you say this machshava that he was saying, let's say the thought, I want to learn Ayin Beis, or 2 + 2 = 4, or anything, the parameter there is only to contain the energy, but not because there's an actual physical parameter. That's what he's saying right now.
There has to be some sort of parameter because you can't think of two thoughts at the same time.
Yeah, correct. That's fine, but that doesn't negate the. Okay, 1 second. So 1 second. Let me finish this. Mashayin kan ruchen in tefes mokim mitzadas, but actually nit vizu nikl begeder bechine mokim. Shamokim ho en al klei mishkan ashra saruchen. Boy, ulechein yochali es ashra. That's why there can be the residing of kama minikeches of many different faculties v'slapshus b'mokim echad, and manifestation in one place, one physical place. Umazeh yuvel lama.
You're not including Machshav Diva Maisa?
With the three that he said before, the Seichel, Rotzen, and
you can't have like two different Machshavas at the same time.
First of all, you can't have conscious Machshavas two at the same time. But in the same brain, you could have millions of ideas.
There's something called an unconscious Machshav. I never knew that.
Well, let's put it this way: when you access right now a thought that you had yesterday, that thought is residing near in the same place of millions of other thoughts.
As a thought or a piece of seichel? I don't know.
Piece of seichel, so call it a piece of seichel.
Yeah, but machshav's already.
We're not talking about machshav. Who said machshava?
Times, could you come up with two different ideas?
Yeah.
So now between those two ideas, what the first idea left? It went somewhere.
The idea didn't leave, but you have two
so it's still there somewhere.
That's a different discussion. He's not discussing now conscious thought. He's talking about the different forces that work in one place.
It's still there.
I never knew there was a thing called unconscious machshav. Okay.
Well, you don't need, a 5-year-old knows that ideas don't go anywhere just because you're not thinking about them.
But that's not an idea. It's not a machshava.
I don't know what's you're talking about a conscious thought. And you're talking about the idea before you were thought about it. When you're asleep, where do your ideas go? They reside in the brain, all in one place. You're talking now when you access it. It's like saying many apps on in one phone.
Right.
You're accessing one app at a time because you're limited. Because you live in a physical world. So physical world, you can't do two things at once.
Right.
But they're residing near each other. That's what he's talking here is not. You're going in your own mind. You're going in a place that has nothing to do with the discussion here. He gave an example here. The example was that a person, his mind tells him something is important. The Rotzen is now awakened. And the third thing is the Hirer, how to do it. Those three things are happening all at the same time, in the same place. They are happening simultaneously. All in the same location. Question is how? The answer is because it's not Gashmi's activities. If they were Gashmi's, they would not be able. If they were Gashmi's, Let's say the three things have to be done by three. I would tell you, listen, I have an idea. You would say, oh, that's a great idea, and I'm passionate about it. And you'd be the implementer. That would have to be three different entities in three different places. Here they're all happening in one place because...
It's a vertical thing, so to speak. But,
That's it. So that's what he's saying now. Okay. And you're jumping to try to understand our spiritual space. He's trying to simply understand physical versus spiritual. Okay. Then we'll get to spiritual space. And spiritual space has plenty of distinctions too. It's still space.
You said machshava is with a plural.
I told you machshava is implementing what he desires. That's what we're talking here. So this will understand l'mayla for a maskil, for an intelligent person. How many different, multitude of different concealments and evolutions and manifestations, many levels, many levels, are all happening in one place. He's trying to give us a little vision of an example in our own lives of the ability to understand how a lot of things can happen in one area. That's the bottom line. It's really giving us a taste of what it means to be, what spirituality means, as opposed to the physical. This takes time. We don't think like this. We do think physically. That's why this is a chiddush. And in truth, God is the place of the world, the space of the world, and this world is not His space. It means everything that in godliness is happening here all the time and so on. For Eid Yuvin Yesir, here goes now the second example that he gave here, and we'll understand this even more. Furthermore, Al Pi Moshel Acher, according to another example, with the power of intelligence that manifests in action. Like for example, the action of writing. Remember, he brought the second thing here. So let's see what he says. 4 different things. The yad, the hand, writes what arose in the mind. That means that in the hand is melubish, is manifest the power of intelligence. And also the letters of thought. Because you have to think when you're going to write, let's say a word, let's say anoichi, or you're going to write a word moida'ani. You have to think in your mind the letters, and that's all being manifest in your hand as you're writing. So there's intelligence, and there's the actual letters. The gam yesh le'ezut shuka b'shasha kesef, and there's also some type of desire, some type of pleasure, I guess. Shuka here would be, he wouldn't do it if he wouldn't want to write it. There has to be some desire, some driving desire. Motivation. Shuka, yeah. Shuka is usually a taiva, like a desire, yeah. Why is he writing? V'gam kayach asiyah, hu kayach hayad hakeseves. V'gam yesh le'ezet shuka b'shasha kesef. V'gam kayach asiyah, and also the power of action is also the power of the hand hakeseves that writes. Nimtza sheyesh kan arba mina islapshus v'tzimtzumim. We find that there are 4 different types of manifestations and concealments and diminishments: seichel, umachshava, umidas, umaisa. The seichel is the intelligence that is being conveyed. The machshava is the letters in the oisius. The midas is the tshuka. This is very good. So you have a whole seder shlosh: machshava, midas, seichel, machshava, midas, and maisa is the actual ability to write, to shape letters.
Seichel,
the Dalet,
not order.
Seichel, Machshava, Midas, and Maisa. That's what he says.
I don't understand why it would be that order. Why don't you go?
Because you didn't listen to what I just read 2 lines before. It starts with an intelligence.
Yeah.
An intelligent idea. That's Seichel. Machshava is what letters to use.
Okay.
Midas is the desire to want to write. Chuka, that there's and Maisa is the actual wisdom, the actual power of writing. So we see this. Then he goes on and says, the 4 are also in dibur, in speech. So we have it so far in machshava, in Maisa. Now he's going in speech. Why? He speaks what his wisdom compels him to speak. And he thinks about the letters with which he's speaking. And he has a desire and an inclination and a motivation to speak. He doesn't even mention the fourth one here, actually. What? I want to understand this, so that's why I'm learning this.
No, because the Dibur is already, he doesn't mention it.
I know, but the question is why. Let me just finish. I'm reading a few more lines. Now these four tzimtzumim are just what we feel with our seichel. We can only feel these four tzimtzum, which are connected to four isis of Shem Havaya, and tzimtzum she'en b'chinas ishtalshus mechach melamata. Aval be'emes, because that's the ishtalshus for chachma and lower. But be'emes, in truth, yeshri b'ir avavas madregas b'tzimtzumim. We only sense these four. But in truth, there is a multitude of many tens of thousands of levels that are higher than ishtalshus until until there can be the creation of Havaya. And the tzimtzum to bring from higher shtalshus into Havaya is more than the tzimtzum that brings from Chochmah into Midas and Midas into Machshava and so on. The Gamatzina, we also find Islapshus Mishnei Havchim B'nei Echad. We find also the manifestation of two opposites in one area. In the heart, you have both love and anger. They can even be in the same second. Like a father who punishes his son. Bekas, with anger, because of his love. And they both manifest in the hand of the father that is hitting the son. The klal that goes up from this, that rises from this, is that we see in actuality, empirically, many different manifestations in one place, and also the combination of two opposites, and the manifestation in one place. Wow. So to conclude here, what does he say here? So every faculty has its place, but it's not manifest in the geshem. That's where they all can be in one place. Okay, now it seems to be that he's going to another subject. Not another subject, he's going deeper into it. Okay, so he gave an explanation here how different things can occupy one space beruchnis. So it's not makam gashmi, it's makam ruchni. We'll stop here. Beginning of chapter 168, page 338. Then we'll move on. Yeah.